the president. Why would he leave Americans in the dark? Why would he mislead about this virus, knowing that that deception could actually cost people their lives because they did not know how deadly this virus was, as he downplayed it for weeks, if not months?
Because he doesn't care what happens to American people, and for various reasons he believed it was to his benefit to keep it secret or to downplay it. Look, we have so much damning information. That quote is damning. The recent news that the post office was going to send out in excess of 650 million masks, and the White House torpedoed that idea because they didn't want to panic people. I mean, we're getting to the point where this isn't just negligent, it's willfully criminal. Imagine how many tens of thousands of Americans would still be with us if we had all been wearing masks provided to us for free by the American government. It's mind-boggling.
Mary Trout, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. The book, again, is Too Much and Never Enough: How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Including Saturday Night Live, the Kate McKinnon sketch. So I think that her loss will certainly be deep in America.
And Jeff Toobin, she continued to write opinions and be on the bench even during these last few months, right? In the last set of the court. I mean, people would think, oh, she was extremely sick. She still managed to have her voice heard.
I mean, Aaron, this woman was less than 5 feet tall by the end, way less than 100 pounds, and tougher than any NFL linebacker I have ever encountered. I mean, this woman had so many diseases and so many cancer, and she fought through them all. I don't believe she missed more than a handful of oral arguments during her tenure. This woman was determined, she fought as she could be, and she fought through cancer for literally for decades. But, you know, it eventually caught up with her. She was 87 years old, and that's old.
Sanjay, I believe you're still with me. I mean, just when Jeff references that she had been fighting cancer for decades, I mean, she actually had surgery for colon cancer all the way back in 1999. So she had been fighting cancer, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, literally for decades, as she continued full steam ahead.
Yeah, it really is incredible when you look at her health history, and as Jeff was saying, how tough she was. And coming back from these procedures, I mean, we were covering all of her medical therapies very closely, and you know, some of these therapies are tough. You know, they just take a lot out of you. Colon cancer, as you mentioned, back in 1999, she was first diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2009, 11 years ago, and they thought that, you know, she had gotten through it. In the middle of it, she had lung cancer, and that was in 2018, and then it was this recurrence of pancreatic cancer, Aaron, that was that really was of concern. She tried immunotherapy, it didn't really work, and that's when she started the more palliative sort of therapies.
So everyone stay with me. If anyone is...
We still have a way to go to ensure that all people in our land enjoy the equal protection of the laws. But considering how far we have come, there is good cause for optimism about our country's future.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, dead tonight at the age of 87. Shannon Bream, host of Fox News at Night, who put together that piece for us, joins me now. Shannon, obviously she has had so many health challenges over the years, but she has just been such a fighter and such a courageous member of this court, showing up in the middle of all of those procedures and doing her best to live her life as a justice to the very end. Your thoughts on this obviously very big news story on so many angles tonight?
Yeah, it's shocking. Anytime that we get news that one of the justices has been passed away, We have been through so many roller coasters with her following, as you said, so many challenges to her health over the years, and she has fought back and been so incredibly strong. I remember being struck by the death of her husband. They were extremely close and just devoted to each other. And when he passed away a few years ago, I was in court the next day and I was stunned to see her there. But she was so devoted to the court, to her job there, to her life's work there. She was dedicated, and she was not going to let anything stop her. She had long said when people would nudge her or push her into retirement and try to suggest that, she'd say, nope, as long as I feel like I can do this job mentally and physically, I'm going to keep doing this job. And that's what she did for years and years and years. She was the second female appointed to the Supreme Court. She's had such an enormous impact. It's hard to overstate it at this point. It is a shock tonight because she has overcome so much in her life and been so incredibly strong, and has had prayers from around the world as she has gone public. And she is one of the justices who has been very open and honest with us as members of the press corps covering the Supreme Court. Each time that she was hospitalized or had an issue, she wasn't somebody that tried to hide it from us. She was public in sharing these different struggles that she had. And so we knew a lot of what was going on, and there was a lot of talk with her last time of the reoccurrence of cancer about her ability to continue to fight. And she had said she was undergoing chemo and that was going well. This was just a matter of weeks ago. She felt hopeful about that. So obviously in these last few days and weeks, she did privately come to terms, I can only assume, and with her family about the fact that her life was coming to a close. We're told she was surrounded by her family tonight. They were with her. She's got 2 children and several grandchildren, and she was incredibly devoted to them too, and so very, very proud of them. She just spoke glowingly of her family, and she had shared over the years about what it was like to be a young woman in law school during the time that she was in law school, and how she was expected to juggle things with a husband and with children eventually, and that she was treated differently in those days when she was coming out of school, one of the top graduates. And yet being viewed by some employers as somebody who might be a liability because she was a woman who valued her family, her marriage, and her kids. And she blazed a path. And she was somebody who showed us that you could be incredibly committed to your professional life, to fighting fights that to her were exceptionally important, and to raising a family as well. So it is a shock to the system tonight because she has done so well in rallying so many past difficulties. But we know that we're told she was at peace and with her family, and that is the news tonight at 87 years old that she has passed away.
What a remarkable life. And as you point out, so perfect.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg was consistently one of the U.S. Supreme Court's moderate to liberal members. First as a lawyer, then a judge and a justice, she believed the Constitution guaranteed women greater rights.
Over the course of now over 2 centuries, it has grown and developed so that more and more people are included in that concept, we the people.
Rejected after law school for a Supreme Court clerkship because she was a woman, she began her legal career as a law professor and pioneering advocate for women's legal rights, successfully arguing a string of cases before the Supreme Court that made it easier to sue for sex discrimination. It was President Carter who first appointed her to be a federal judge.
She has genuinely distinguished herself.
Then in 1993, President Clinton put her on the Supreme Court, making her the second woman justice.
It contributes to the end of the days when women, at least half the talent pool in our society, appear in high places only as one-at-a-time performers.
At her confirmation hearing, she clearly stated her support for the right to abortion.
This is something central to a woman's life, to her dignity.
And as a justice, she voted to uphold abortion rights. She wrote the court's opinion putting an end to the men-only policy at VMI, the Virginia Military Institute, saying it was based on outmoded stereotypes. She joined the court's majorities in striking down the death penalty for juveniles and in ruling that, quote, death is not a suitable punishment for a mentally retarded criminal. She also voted to roll back Bush administration policies in the war on terror. A blistering opinion in a case about equal pay for women renewed her standing as a feminist icon.
We got the bull in the We welcome today Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
She was nicknamed Notorious RBG, a play on a rapper's name, and featured in a documentary movie.
I am 84 years old and everyone wants to take a picture with me.
She married a fellow student in college, Martin Ginsburg. They had 2 children. Years later, she recalled receiving some practical advice on her wedding day.
It pays, Mother said. It pays sometimes to be a little deaf. I have followed that advice with only occasional lapses, not only at home, but in the places I have worked, and even in relating to my colleagues at the Supreme Court.
A passionate opera fan, she appeared in several Washington productions in full costume but in silent roles. Regular checkups and early intervention helped her recover from 3 surgeries for colon, pancreatic, and lung cancer. And doctors inserted a stent after discovering blockage in a heart artery. But a recurrence of cancer led to new rounds of treatment and hospital stays. And now the court's most powerful liberal justice is gone. Pete Williams, NBC News at the Supreme Court.
Pete Williams, talking about the life of the great Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who has left us at age 87. I believe we have Linda Greenhouse. Linda Greenhouse, longtime Supreme Court reporter for the New York Times, has written about and documented the life and career of this great woman. Linda, your thoughts on this dark night, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I'm just personally shaken. It was your call that gave me this news. It's the end of an era, by which I mean, you know, this is a woman who was first in her class in law school and couldn't get a job. She was highly recommended for a Supreme Court clerkship, and Justice Felix Frankfurter famously said, you know, she's great, but I just can't have a woman in my chambers. And by the end of her life, you know, we've seen a revolution in sex equality and other kinds of equality, and she was the spokesperson and the really architect of a whole new way of thinking about the meaning of equal protection under the Constitution. So it's a terrible loss of a great American life.
Yeah. And, you know, what do you think she will be best remembered for? Obviously, her advocacy for women's rights, but she was also a key vote in issues of voting rights, something that's still not fully resolved and still has had some issues, Shelby, etc. What do you think her greatest achievements will be viewed as?
Well, unfortunately, of course, in the voting rights area, she was noted for her powerful dissenting opinion, where she said to Chief Justice Roberts' opinion in the majority in Shelby County, she said, you know, that's like when it stops raining and you say you don't need an umbrella, because he said, well, things have changed in the South and we don't need the Voting Rights Act to protect people anymore. She found a voice in dissent in the last, I'd say, 15 years of her career that was extremely powerful, up to and including this summer when the court enabled the Trump administration to let employers who didn't want to provide contraception coverage totally off the hook. And she said, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of women who are going to be deprived because of this decision of benefit at work to which they're legally entitled. And she was the one who said that. So we've lost a powerful dissenting voice.
Style of music making, which even when we get back to performing regular, right?
Your voice wore out?
What are some of the memories that you have of her?
I remember when I first met her, she would, interview people who had applied to clerk for her. And I had been warned that she has a very deliberate style of speaking. And she would speak slowly and measured. I don't think I ever heard her use the word or And I speak very quickly, and so I had to make sure that I didn't talk over her. But from that first interview, she at the same time really set
me and others who would meet with her in that context at ease. And then in the year working for her, what I remember beyond just the personal warmth was her total dedication to her job. She worked extremely hard, extremely long hours, late into the night virtually every day, had the highest standards in her work. And it was really inspiring, frankly, to see someone so dedicated to get the law right.
And Aaron, how much time did you get to spend with her? Did you also see the same thing? And when did you see her humor, right? The part of her that we all then started to see that made her, I guess, for lack of a better word, a folk hero.
Well, I had the honor of Justice Ginsburg officiating my wedding in 2017. And recently, upon the birth of my daughter, she sent me a note and a T-shirt making her an honorary grant clerk, although I did not have the honor of clerking for Justice Ginsburg. She was somebody that just drew people in, even in her own reserved way. She was somebody who made you feel like you were part of her caring circle. In terms of her sense of humor, it was very subtle. You know, it was a great honor to be able to make Justice Ginsburg laugh. She seemed like a very serious person, but part of the reason that she, for example, and Justice Scalia got along very well is because he constantly made her laugh. And the same with her outgoing husband, Marty Ginsburg, with whom she had an incredible marriage of true partnership that really rested on the fact that he constantly made her laugh. Her own humor was more subtle. She was someone who she was always ready with a very subtle barb, and you had to kind of look for it in her writing. But she certainly appreciated family. She appreciated the institution of the court. And I'm just very struck at this moment by the fact that according to NPR, she dictated a statement to her granddaughter, Clara Sparra, and she said that her greatest wish was that she her successor not be installed by this president. And I think it's of a piece of her great reverence of institutions that she did not want this president to replace her. So she was a whole person, but at this point, what is really on my mind is just thinking about how much she wanted her legacy to not be defined by being replaced by Donald Trump. And that is the great tragedy of this moment.
So Manu, let me ask you that now that Aaron's explaining that. Okay, so Manu is now not with us, but let me just lay out what Manu said on that front. He did say that obviously there were a lot of questions, but that this is something that if Donald Trump is reelected, Mitch McConnell would likely move to do during the lame duck session. And Gloria Borger is with me, and Gloria, Manu is laying out the math, right, that even if you had Democrats take
women's rights and change the way the country deals with a lot of big issues. Obviously, she came from the left, but she had this relationship with Antonin Scalia on that court, who was obviously from the right, and they got along fabulously. And I saw them together at an opera event in Washington, and it was quite something to see when they were both on the court.
You know, she talked about her faith. She was the first Jewish woman on the Supreme Court. Antonin Scalia, obviously, a very strong Catholic, but they were both people who I think cared so deeply about their religious culture and background. And of course, opera, which has been mentioned, that was something that they shared. And she was just such a remarkable figure and someone who was so admired, I think, by so many people. She was herself. She had a great sense of humor, and obviously just an enormous intellect. So Brett, obviously, you know, it feels, you want so much to just be remembering her life, and we will do that over the course of the next several days and covering her legacy. But we are within a breath of an election in this country. And as Mark Thiessen just pointed out, the president does have a Republican Senate. So your thoughts as we are 46 days away from a presidential election, given the history of what has happened in the past in these situations?
This is truly remarkable as far as timing. 46 days to an election. Senator McConnell, the majority leader, has said if that happened before the election, he would move forward. And, you know, we talk about what moves an electorate. This potentially moves an electorate, but you could play it, Martha, both ways. Tonight is about the life and legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but make no mistake about it, filling that seat and who does it is going to be a major, major part of this election.
It absolutely is, and it will.
Yeah, and I, unfortunately, I think that no one doubts that it is not going to be pretty, and that this fight is going to be perhaps one of the most epic political fights that we've seen in a very, very long time, because you're right, we should take our time and take a moment to pause, to reflect on this great woman and her contributions. But politics doesn't wait for long, and doesn't wait for much, and doesn't pause for much, and doesn't respect much. And unfortunately, I think it's coming. Thank you to all my guests. Thank you so much, John Meacham. I always appreciate your voice. Thank you to all my guests on this sad night. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died at the age of 87. MSNBC will have continuing coverage all night long. All In with Chris Hayes starts now.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Some stunning and sad, desperately sad news tonight. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died. The Supreme Court announcing just a short while ago that she passed at the age of 87 due to complications of cancer. Her health, of course, had been tenuous for,
Yeah, I mean, we're told that her family was with her tonight when she died peacefully. She's survived by 2 children and a whole lot of grandchildren that she was very proud of and talked about all the time. She was the second woman to serve on the court. She was appointed in 1993 by then President Bill Clinton, and she has forged a path. I mean, from long before she joined the court until all of these years that she has served, she has been a strong advocate for ideas that she believes in. She has been celebrated by the left. She is an icon. People dress their babies as RBG. She is somebody that has a very loyal and loving following. We have all cheered for her over the years through the...
On the phone as well is CNN Chief Legal Analyst Jeffrey Toobin, who's written extensively on the Supreme Court. Also on the phone, CNN's Ariane DeVogue and Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Jeff Toobin, let's start with you. First of all, I know you were speaking to Aaron earlier, but for our viewers who are just joining us, just talk about Justice Ginsburg. Jeff Toobin, can you hear me? Okay, we don't have Toobin. Let's check in with Sanjay Gupta just to talk about the medical aspect on this. Sanjay, pancreatic cancer is obviously...
I'll tell you, the White House is still the White House, no matter how you do it. And I get to this gorgeous, beautiful place, and I'm up at the incredible suite level, and there's Abraham Lincoln's suite. It's called the Lincoln bedroom. Remember, Clinton used to lease it out to people for money. They never changed, do they? Remember when Barbara Streisand, she's another beauty, by the way. But remember, Barbara Streisand used to stay in that suite, which was the only problem I had with it. But tell me, no, but I do like her voice. I do, I really do. Some of them I don't like even their voices. But she used to stay there, and I'm standing in the Lincoln bedroom, the history, the whole thing, the bed, the desk, the Gettysburg Address, the beautiful 7 years ago, this beautiful Gettysburg Address. He wrote it there, and also on his carriage ride up to Gettysburg. He delivered the Gettysburg Address, and they say the only one that got worse press than I did was Abraham Lincoln. Did anyone ever hear that? And I said, no way they got worse. Maybe he got bad, but no way he gets worse. Now people are starting to say, it's probably true. I think you get the worst. Now they used to say, no, Newt Gingrich, great guy. He said, no, Abraham Lincoln got the worst press. They were worse to him than anybody. He was a very depressed person. His wife was very depressed. It was a depressed kind of a thing. He said,
about again. She said that she would resume her duties. It's a tough therapy that she went through. It's a lot to go through for anybody. Obviously, someone who's in their mid to late 80s, even harder. But she seemed to be doing okay. But I think at that point, Anderson, I think going back to July now, it was pretty clear that this cancer was not going to be something that was going to be effectively treated. They just didn't know how quickly it would spread.
Baby, you got me a cross.
For some reason,
that the president, as you know, the president
watches the news more closely than most people that work in the news, and I'm sure he will have a response. I'm sure that there will be a response to this first, a tribute to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and then very quickly after that, a question about next steps. But the first step I would fully anticipate from the president will be a tribute to the death of an American, to an American icon who has just died.
Jonathan Carr, ABC's chief White House correspondent. Thank you so much, my friend. We're going to be joined now on the phone with Mary Bruce, our chief congressional correspondent. Mary Bruce, what's been the reaction on the Hill?
Well, we are still, of course, keeping a close eye to see how Congress reacts, but of course, everyone wondering what are Republicans going to do next. The Republican leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, has made very clear that he will try to fill this seat, even though we are now under 50 days to an election. Timing here is going to be critical. They don't have a lot of time, just until a transition in early January, to try and fill this seat. But Leader McConnell has made very clear that is his intention, even though, of course, it is the opposite of an argument that he made when there was the fight over trying to appoint Merrick Garland to fill the seat by Justice Scalia. In 2016, at the time, Mitch McConnell, of course, said that it would be up to voters to make that decision. But now he says this is a very different situation. He says it is a completely different game, essentially, because he says currently, of course, Republicans are in control of the Senate and of the White House. He says that changes the calculus. Democrats, though, say that is simply splitting hairs. They are going to try and delay this. And, of course, remember, because of the rules currently, Republicans they have the votes to fill this seat. But, of course, Democrats have the ability to try and delay and delay and delay. And I suspect that you will certainly see that. Trying to fill this seat, of course, is a potentially risky move for Trump and for Republicans. A lot of eyes now are on moderate Republicans. A handful of critical moderate Republicans, several incumbents who are in tight races, could they potentially be swayed to try and oppose a rush to fill this seat? It, of course, just takes 4 votes to flip this, to try and block whoever the president puts forward. I think right now the Hill, much like the White House, as John Carl says, is simply trying to absorb this news, this tragic loss for the country. But of course, everyone, given the timing of this now completely changes the calculus as we head into this election, and all eyes now on Senate Republicans and their next move.
Mary, some news is just coming into us. ABC News has confirmed from several sources close to President Trump that he will put forward in the next few days the name of his nominee.
That does not surprise me. Of course, we know that the president is eager to try and fill this seat, maintain the balance, or change the balance on the court, of course. This is, as we mentioned, a lengthy process. There is time to try and fill this seat, but this is not something that happens instantaneously. There, of course, you have hearings, you have a nominating fight, you have plenty of time, of course, for whomever is put forward to go through a certain vetting process. But Republicans, I suspect, are going to try and do their hardest to push through whomever the president may name.
Mary, a final question. Any sense of what kind of nominee, certainly we know it'll be a conservative, what kind of nominee we expect the president will put forward?
Well, he has, floated some names, but certainly, everyone is wondering exactly who this will be. We do know, of course, that it will be a very conservative justice. I suspect the president very interested in trying to change the balance, but it is just such a monumental decision, and he will have to pick someone who is not too controversial, someone, of course, who can potentially be confirmed in now what is a very short amount of time. And certainly we have seen his previous nominees face an intense scrutiny. Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing it was something that I think was certainly not the way that the president and many expected it to go down. So if the president wants to do this quickly, it is going to have to be someone that Republicans can unite around, especially getting the support of vulnerable Republicans who are in difficult political positions right now.
Mary Bruce, ABC's chief congressional correspondent, thank you so much. Joining us now via phone is Kate Shaw,
Democratic Party whose first choice wasn't Joe Biden. I'm thinking about a lot of the voters who supported Senator Bernie Sanders in the primary. And something I've been noticing among those folks, those voters, is they're saying to each other online, in person, in different forums, that I'd vote for Joe Biden.
No, you get 10 years, but you can take it down to 3 weeks. It says 10 years. So these guys had just gotten there. I had a news conference because I had to let them know about it, right? We've got many people in jail right now that from before, nobody even talked about taking statutes down. No, but I looked at the Andrew Jackson, right, with the ropes, and I'll tell you, the police did a great job, and Mark Meadows did a great job. He said charge. They charged, and they took these guys out, and they were fairly tough.
Constitution, of course, the decision when to nominate someone for a vacancy on the Supreme Court is entirely up to the president. So in terms of the Constitution, he can. And then it comes down to advice and consent of the Senate. And so certainly there is time. His term, this term, his first term, hopefully, as we all anticipate he will get reelected, is not up until January 20th. So he certainly has sufficient time if he chooses to do that. And then this will fall into the hands of the Senate, who will determine their advice and consent pursuant to the Constitution.
What will happen quickly if the president decides to do that? I mean, do you anticipate social volatility? I mean, how intense a moment would that be? We said the last time the president got justice on the Supreme Court, I mean, the country stopped and the left did things I didn't think any political movement would ever do. What would happen if the president did that now, do you think?
Well, I think this is why it's so important that the American public recognizes the importance of the Supreme Court. And, you know, when President Trump released his list of nominees, that got hardly any media attention. But now I think it's going to be front and center over the next few days. And it's so critical for Joe Biden to put forth his list, which he's refused to do. And should the president move forward with a nominee, I hope that the Senate, particularly the Democrats that are on the Senate Judiciary Committee, will treat this fully and fairly, and they won't politicize it and do everything that we all lived through with the Kavanaugh confirmation, and that they will give it the full attention and respect that a Supreme Court nominee deserves.
Yeah, that was an atrocity, what they did. And you make a very fair point about Biden releasing his list. I hope he does that. Jen Ellis, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
On equality and other things. Someone was just darn smart. You know, just analytic power was off the charts. And we lost today the best of America. You know, there is no replacement for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I want to circle back to something you said, because her husband, Marty, who is a tax law professor and a cherished partner for years, and they had a truly incredible relationship. It's just it's a wonderful part of the story of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who of course was this remarkable trailblazer in an incredibly male-dominated profession, knocking down barriers against women in that profession time after time, and had this relationship with a husband who was so evidently gleeful and supportive of this sort of lifelong, career-long battle that she waged against those barriers.
Yeah, I mean, we could learn so much from the way she lived her life. I mean, also her friendships with people across the aisle, which maybe we'll talk about in a minute. But, you know, she was a trailblazer. This is the person who was the first woman member of the Harvard Law Review, and she had a child at the time. She was the first person to be hired with tenure at Columbia Law School. She writes the first case book on women's equality. She brings 6 landmark cases to the Supreme Court on women's equality. You know, she's the second female justice ever in our nation's history, and the first female Jewish justice ever. So she did all those things, and part of that was possible because she had a husband, Marty, who reveled in helping his wife and you know, learned to cook because she didn't want to do that, and she needed more time to write and things like that. And what a lovely model for our future to think about and reflect on that.
I want to bring into this conversation Melissa Murray. She's a professor.
Mentoring and supporting other women. She has become very close on the Supreme Court to Elena Kagan, who is younger than Ruth Ginsburg's daughter. I mean, they have a very close relationship. They are both legal. They were both legal academics before they became judges. She certainly has a mentor relationship with Elena Kagan, and Elena Kagan is going to be in a just a trio of liberal justices now, if Donald Trump can succeed in confirming someone, which is not a foregone conclusion. I'm sure we're going to spend some time talking about that. But just because Donald Trump wants to fill this seat, and just because Mitch McConnell wants to fill this seat, they still need to hold all their Republicans, or 49 of them, or 50 of them, so they can get Vice President Pence to fill a tie, to break a tie. It's not over. So let's we're going to put a pin in that discussion, but that's not a foregone conclusion.
Also, Jeff, when you look at her past, the career, you talked about the career she had before, but the life she had before the career she had before the Supreme Court is also just really extraordinary. Where she came from, raised in Flatbush in Brooklyn. She had a sister who had died as a child, I think when she was still very, very, very young. Her mother died when she was just about to graduate high school. She went to Cornell. She then met her future husband at Cornell. They get married like a month after she graduates from Cornell, and she ultimately had a child, and then after being married and had a child, went to Harvard Law School. And I want to play something from a documentary, RBG. This is Justice Ginsburg talking about her mom, who passed away when she was 17.
My mother died when I was 17. I wish I could have had her longer.
Well, her mother must have been a very steely person, because she had cancer a long time and lived trying to get her child through high school.
She had 2 lessons that she repeated over and over. Be a lady and be independent. Be a lady meant don't allow yourself to be overcome by useless emotions like anger. And by independent, she meant it would be fine if you met Prince Charming and lived happily ever after, but be able to fend for yourself.
Erin Carmen, co-author of Notorious RBG, joins us now by phone. Erin, that loss that she lived through as a teenager in high school, the fact that she was able to propel herself to Cornell, and then after marriage and having a child, to then go to Harvard Law School, and with all the discrimination she even faced at Harvard Law School, where I think she was one of like 6 or 9
She was
women.
one of 9, yeah. No, one of 9 women.
Out of a class of like 500.
Yeah. Anderson, she was somebody who was shaped by loss very early on. She was someone who not only lost her mother, but her sister. Her husband struggled with cancer when they were in law school, and she would stay up all night taking care of him. She learned to get by on 2 hours of sleep long before her own cancer diagnosis. I mean, you could say that cancer was this shadow that haunted both her family and herself. And yet the fact that she really wanted to fulfill the dreams that her mother had for herself, for her. Her mother had a dream of education for herself that was not realized. She herself dreamed of a life in the law, a life fighting for what was right, and to have a profession in a very practical sense. And the kind of perseverance and tenacity that she showed throughout her life, throughout cancer, broken ribs, repeated hospitalizations, the loss of her husband, being the only woman on the court, seeing the politicization of the court, seeing how jaggedly it moved to the right when President Bush was able to replace the moderates on the court. Throughout all of it, she really beat the odds. Unfortunately, she couldn't beat these odds. But it was a life that was repeatedly defined by defying people's expectations of her.
Defying people's expectations. I read a story that when she got to Harvard Law School, the dean, I think it was of Harvard Law School, I think brought all the 9 women to dinner who were students, and I don't want to, I'm paraphrasing, but it said something to the effect of, well, what did he say?
Well, he asked all of the women to stand up and justify how it was that they could take the place of a man. And Justice Ginsburg was honest to a fault, and perhaps she was joking, but to my knowledge, what she said was not true. She said she was hoping to be a better wife to her husband. The real reason that Justice Ginsburg was at Harvard Law School is because she had a passion for the law. She loved her work. It was one of the great loves of her life, the law. And she used the law as an instrument to expand rights and equality for people who had been written out of the original We the People. But she was just somebody who wholeheartedly devoted herself to that task. And so, no, she was not at Harvard Law School in order to make a better dinner conversation with her husband, although they did have a wonderful relationship.
And she loved Harvard Law School, ended up going to Columbia, where she graduated, I think, like first in her class, or tied for first in her class.
Yes, she did, yes. In fact, when she got to Columbia, everybody sort of gulped and had been warned of her. She joined the law review at 2 different Ivy League institutions, which I believe broke a record at the time. But despite that sterling achievement, Anderson, she was not able to find a job for the longest time. She said that there were 3 strikes against her. She was a woman, she was a mother, and she was a Jew. And it was, in fact, having so many doors slammed in her face that led her to the cause of gender equality. She, she might have ended up at a cushy law firm had she been given more chances. And instead, her own experience with discrimination, both as a mother, as a woman, religious discrimination, instead led her to think about how to broaden opportunities for a greater range of people. Instead led her to figure out how to use the Constitution to make We the People more than just an ideal, more than just a broken promise.
Be on the ballot. I mean, if things are ripe for problems right here, Tucker.
Sagar and Jenny, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Tucker.
We want to take a moment to consider some of the issues that ultimately are decided by this country's highest court. Immigration is one of them. Obviously, it's a key issue for the Trump administration as well. Dan Stein is the president of the Federation for American Immigration Reform. No one watches the court more carefully on questions relating to immigration than he does. We're happy to have him on tonight. Dan, thanks.
Good to be here.
So to what extent is our immigration policy crafted at the Supreme Court level?
Certainly major issues that define our constitutional norms, our separation of powers, which are very important in immigration, are definitely decided at the Supreme Court. Justice Ginsburg was a part of that faction that sought to erode the traditional deference the courts had traditionally given to the president in matters dealing with border security, border control, and procedural process for aliens at the border. So, this is really kind of a philosophical dividing issue where you see the liberal justices, which Ginsburg obviously has been a part of, eroding certain doctrinal principles that prevented, for example, Americans from suing on behalf of aliens outside the country, which dramatically increased the volume and amount of litigation that was used, for example, in challenging many of the things that President Trump tried to do during his administration. So this is a very significant thing. If Donald Trump is able to actually make this appointment go quickly, and I mean, come on, Tucker, what would Chuck and Nancy do in the same situation, right? McConnell's got to put somebody up there quickly. So does the president, because this is his chance to really put his mark on the court and restore this idea that Congress makes the immigration laws and the president enforces them under these broad delegations of authority. Otherwise, the system spins out of control.
A popular figure, I've got a bobblehead head doll that someone sent me. We all have our stories about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but her love of music, many occasions in Washington when we would sit and talk, and I can't say I was the closest to her, but I certainly knew her well and knew her through her love of opera, and her friendship with Justice Scalia, and her, of course, deep friendship with Steve Breyer, and I know this is a horrible loss for all of those who loved her so dearly and honored her and respected her.
You made that point about her sort of pop cultural meme status, which, sort of exploded in the last 5 or 6 years. Irene Carmona, former colleague here and friend who co-wrote this great biography of her.
Exactly.
And what I heard from people was that like she really was into that. She liked the icon status.
She did.
She enjoyed being a kind of pop cultural icon.
She had great sense of humor about it, the Notorious RBG, and I mean, she let herself be videotaped during her workout. You know, she enjoyed it because I think she felt it was kind of amusing and reinforcing for other women that she was such a role model for. And also, as a cancer survivor, I can tell you, her ability to work through the treatments and the pain and multiple cancers was just extraordinary.
Andrew Mitchell, I know that you've got a lot of work to do, and you were kind enough.
Opportunity. The idea, Sager says that we're supposed to be afraid of potentially normalizing violence, whatever that means. Our institutions have to be able to function efficiently in our country. The Supreme Court is a part of those the efficiencies of those institutions.
Mr. Lennox told Mr. String that he was amenable.
It's because of the internet. You know, you think of that as almost an ancient kind of a crime, right? But it's not. It's a very modern crime, and it's an unbelievably profitable crime. They traffic in women, a little bit children, but mostly women, where they'll put
administration to sort through. That's what worries me.
Well, you have people that do nothing but look for the traffickers. To me, the traffickers are the biggest scum in the world.
How the balance tips?
Well, that's an excellent question because, you know, it's now the liberals really are on the downside. They come out of a pretty good term. The 2019-20 term was a pretty good one for the liberals, even though they are in the minority. They held on to, they stopped a lot of reversals of law and managed to work with 2 justices on the right wing to expand protections for gay and transgender workers. So they're and you know, managed to preserve abortion rights to this point. So now with the possibility of President Trump being able to nominate a 3rd person to the court, nominate and get confirmation of a 3rd conservative appointee, this is going to become a 6-3 court, and no longer will it just be what was 4 liberals hoping they could woo over Chief Justice John Roberts, who feels a sense of balance at the court. Now, Chief Justice John Roberts, it won't be in his hands. It could potentially be in the hands of a Brett Kavanaugh, depending on what happens. Anderson. But it's a much different court today than it's been at any other point. You know, since the 70s we've talked about this conservative court, but we're now tipped to a place where the right wing controls like it never has before.
Jeff,
and you know, if I was wrong, they would, but they can't question me, because when you see right to try, we took care of our vets. We just got a 91% approval rating from the vets. 91, it's never happened before. We got choice approved. We got accountability approved. Drugs are way down. We got a little setback with this whole situation where, you know, these shutdowns caused a lot of problems with drugs, a lot of everything, but drugs were way down. We had our best year in the history of our country last year, and we're going to have the best year, we're going to have a better year coming up. That's why you have an obligation to vote for the guy that got you there. And remember this, and I really appreciate this. Thank you. But I appreciate this because 9 Democrat mayors of cities in the Iron Range, you know that, have endorsed me over Sleepy Joe. What do you like better, Sleepy Joe or Slow Joe? What's better? Let's do a poll. We do a poll. I do free polls. You know, these polls they charge you a fortune for this stuff. They interviewed 3 people, and you know, then they charge you $1 million. We interviewed 233 people. I got thousands of people that listen to it free. What do you like better as a nickname, Slow Joe or Sleepy Joe? So let's go. Wait, Slow Joe first. Okay? So just scream if you like it. So you have a choice. Slow Joe, they're both very appropriate. Slow Joe or Sleepy Joe. Ready? Slow Joe. I think we're going to have a winner. Sleepy Joe. Now, a lot of people say I'm too nice at Sleepy Joe, that I'm actually being too nice. I don't know. He's a sleepy guy. But Biden is going to shut down your iron. Remember, it wasn't just the tariffs that put on your competitors that were dumping iron ore and steel.
And if there's any greater reminder now, we now possibly see the balance of the Supreme Court being held. So if there's any election for you to vote on and to get up and do so for your ancestors, for generations yet unborn, it's this election. And I'm sorry, it's going to take me a while to have patience with people that don't understand the urgency and don't participate.
Let me just say this, is that I think this is going to be a moment where there's going to be calls and expectations from people precisely because of the urgency you said, to see Democrats do everything in their power, obviously, you know, within what you can do, to stop filling a vacancy, right? Like there's a, you know, fortune favors the bold, and I think that thinking outside the box procedurally and all those things, like whatever tool is at your disposal in the Democratic Senate leadership, people are going to mobilize to put pressure on you to use it. And I'm sure you understand that now, particularly having gone through that Kavanaugh confirmation, that there's, you know, people are looking for leadership too that is going to fight, that understands the dynamics of power here and the stakes of it.
Well, I understand the privilege that New Jersey's given me, not only to be a United States Senator, but to be on that Judiciary Committee. Yeah. And I will stand up for what's right without any equivocation whatsoever. And as you already surmised, there are conversations already going on amongst Judiciary Committee members and senators and discussions about how to move forward. Again, my prayer for my nation, not just for my own political perspective, but my prayer for my nation, for the sacrosanct institutions of which we speak. The Senate may have compromised its integrity over recent years, but the Supreme Court, if Mitch McConnell makes the wrong decision here, I just worry about the integrity and the legitimacy of the court.
Senator Cory Booker of the great state of New Jersey, who sits on that Senate Judiciary Committee, which is going to be the focal point of much of the nation's politics already this evening. Thank you for making time tonight, Senator. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, well, this is fantastic. Joining me now, my good friend and someone who I want to speak to about this as much as anyone in the world right now, Rebecca Traister, also writer-at-large at New York Magazine. This is the nightmare scenario that has been dreading. You and I have discussed it for years and months, but it is now here. What are you thinking and feeling at this moment?
I'm feeling shock that is probably irrational, because this was something that everybody knew was a possibility every day. You know, the timing of the news, it was very sudden. I didn't, you know, there had obviously been recent news that she was again ill with cancer, and then she'd been out in public. And so, yeah, I feel surprised and horrified and chilled. And I think everything that millions of people are feeling. I'm very scared and I'm very sad.
What do you see as the most sort of immediate pressing concerns politically? I mean, again, what Cory Booker said here and what Mazie Hirono said and what others have sort of juggling this sense of mourning, and the urgency of the last words of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She obviously understood this, and it loomed over her for the many years of her life in a ways it almost seems unfair and burdensome and prison-like, right? Like that she knew this. She knew that when she was fighting cancer, she was fighting to both stay alive and to live out through the Trump administration. But the dynamics of this political moment.
Yeah, I mean, there is nothing that has happened not only over the past 4 years, but the years that preceded those. There is nothing about Mitch McConnell's Senate that would lead me to believe that there would be anything, that anything would happen here except that they'd ram through the the justice of their choice. This is what the right wing has wanted. This is what the right wing has been planning for. The right wing wants control of the court. And it has gotten it in recent years. And Mitch McConnell was willing to do outrageous things and break every rule in order to maintain control of the court with a Democratic president. And he still has a Republican president. And I don't, I just saw, and I just saw news, and that Lisa Murkowski has said that she would want to wait, but are we going to find enough people who are going to wait? I mean, Joni Ernst months ago was rather ghoulishly talking about how she didn't see any problem with voting through a justice, even in a lame duck Senate, even if Donald Trump lost the presidency. There was an interview, certainly within the past 2 months, in which Joni Ernst said that. I don't see a scenario where, sort of reason and protocol and norms suddenly take hold and we wait to see who the next president is and what the will of the American people is. I don't feel a lot of optimism on that front. I hope I'm wrong to not feel optimism.
Happy to have her on tonight. Molly, thanks for coming on. Respectful question, hoping for a respectful answer, but how would you assess the legal legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
Well, regardless of what you think of her jurisprudence, this is a woman who had a lengthy career in public service. She was inspirational to quite a few women, is only the second woman to sit on the Supreme Court. She had quite a fan base, which seemed to be based more on the results of her rulings in favor of abortion as opposed to any particular legal reasoning or whatnot. But there are people on all sides who appreciated her, and even recently, after Justice Kavanaugh was confirmed, you might remember that she was extremely critical of what Democrats had done to him in terms of trying to destroy his life. And so she was well regarded even by her colleagues there on the Supreme Court for how she defended them.
Well, she was tough, and I admire that. She lived to 87 despite fighting all kinds of cancer, and I definitely admire that. Good for her. But assess, if you would, her jurisprudence. We haven't heard anything about that tonight. It's not a partisan question. I'm just interested. Was she respected by legal scholars?
She actually, apart from her very political work in her support for abortion, which is, of course, the reason why many people like her, she was well regarded by some people for some of the more arcane legal reasoning that she worked through that had helped lawyers throughout the country. It's not so political, but she did have some stuff that people appreciated there. But that's not why she drives the excitement, probably.
Right, that's probably right. So I have what I think is a statement from the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, and I'm going to read it, and I just want to say I'm getting this cold, so apologies for mistakes. But here's, I believe, a statement from Mitch McConnell. Americans re-elected our majority in 2016, expanded it in 2018 because we pledged to work with President Trump and support his agenda, particularly his outstanding appointments to the federal judiciary. Once again, we will keep our promise. President Trump's nominee will receive a vote on the floor of the United States Senate. Again, I believe this is a statement from Mitch McConnell. President Trump's nominee will receive a vote on the floor of the Senate. So that seems to indicate, Molly, the answer to the question we've been asking for the last hour and 20 minutes since we heard this news. It sounds like the White House and the Republican-led Senate will move forward with a replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg before the election. Is that how you read that?
Yeah, and Tucker, that would match with what they had said earlier in the year, that if there was a vacancy, they would move to fill it. And contrary to what you've heard a lot of people say, there's no inconsistency between this and the McConnell rule that came forth in 2016. The McConnell rule was that you don't fill a nomination if the Senate is held by a different party than the president in the final year of a presidency or in an election year. That's not the case here, and that's why he's emphasizing there that the Republicans had the voters gave the Republicans the Senate in 2016 and increased it in 2018, and so that's an indication of what voters want in terms of both the presidency and the Senate. There's no conflict there. So people were hoping that
that Mitch McConnell would not want to move forward, but if this is his statement it indicates that he will be moving forward and that matches with what the American voters would like him to do.
So, assuming this is true, and there will be a nominee, that nominee would have to be announced imminently, very soon. Who do you think it's likely to be? Who should it be?
Well, President Trump has been working on nominees since before he was elected in 2016, and he's had a list that he's upgraded and improved over the years. And I think many people think it would be Amy Coney Barrett if he's to nominate. She's a judge who has a very good reputation. She has been confirmed fairly recently by this Senate, so she has recent relationship with the senators. She's held in high regard, and she is also someone that a lot of Americans appreciate. She faced opposition, not as bad as what Kavanaugh went through, but there was the senator who derided her for being religious and a judge, and she's won a lot of fans by how she handled that. She also had some just really interesting rulings on various constitutional issues, and so there's enough for people to feel confident that she would make a good Supreme Court justice. And this is something that has helped Donald Trump in 2016. A lot of people voted for him because they were so concerned about the Supreme Court. It helped him then. These same voters care very deeply about this issue of who sits on the court. Democrats have said that if they were to take power, they might pack the court, that they would nominate in the mold of a more liberal judge and whatnot. But I'm not sure that that is something that will motivate their voters quite as much as it motivates Republican voters or conservatives who care a great deal about the integrity of the court.
Given what the left did to Brett Kavanaugh, you got to kind of wonder if someone like Amy Coney Barrett, who has quite a few children, would want to go through that.
I think any decent person has to look in horror at what happened, not just to Justice Kavanaugh, but other people who've been nominated to the high court. Unfortunately, people have really ramped up what they're willing to do to fight someone from serving on the court, and anybody who cares about their family, of course, has to be worried. At the same time, I think the country's appetite for the antics that were deployed against Justice Kavanaugh were because what they really didn't like was his jurisprudence, but what they did was invented this horrific campaign to destroy his life and his reputation and his family. That went over very poorly with a lot of American voters, and it also taught them that the left opposition right now isn't just to Trump, it's to anyone who gets in their path, and it's important.
Molly Hemingway, thank you for that analysis.
KSFY equals a chance for more days.
For a long time, but the next one will have anywhere from 1 to 4. Think of that. That will totally change when you talk about life, when you talk about Second Amendment, when you talk about things that are so important to you. You're going to be stuck for 40 years, 35 years, a long time. So this is going to be the most important election, in my opinion, in the history of our country. You got to get it right. Because if you don't get it right, we will not have a country anymore. You're not going to have a country, not as we know it. You won't have a country anymore. We will uphold religious liberty, free speech, and the right to keep and bear arms. We will strike down terrorists who threaten our citizens, and we will keep America out of these ridiculous, horrible, endless foreign wars, countries you never heard of, coming home. We will maintain America's unrivaled military might, and we will ensure peace through strength. That's what we have now, peace through strength. Remember what I told you about those weapons. We don't want to use those weapons. We will end surprise medical billing, require price transparency January 1st. He doesn't
mean anything. It's what happens. I do think, to your point, Lisa Murkowski's statement struck me as interesting and interesting that she got out ahead on it. And Susan Collins, who is someone that you have profiled, that you have been studying, that you have been reporting on, and you've been spending a lot of time in Maine.
I'm in Maine right now.
You are in Maine right now. I don't think it is good for her to have a Supreme Court vacancy that would spell the end of Roe in this election, in an election she's already trailing. Maybe I'm wrong, but your read of it from where you are.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's one of the very interesting dynamics. It's that one of the things that has hit her hardest, and she has been hit hard. It's going to be a very close election here in Maine, but this week there was a poll that had her 12 points down, which is astounding. I can't believe that it would be that much of a blowout, but she is definitely in trouble and has to fight hard. And one of the things that she is hit hardest on is her vote for Justice Kavanaugh.
Yes.
And one of the things that she prides herself on is voting for justices. I mean, she will tell you that she votes for the president's choices for the Supreme Court kind of across the board, right? And I think this will be a hard moment for her.
Vanita, I'm sorry that you got cut off. I want you to let you finish your statement, which was on precisely this topic about McConnell's announcement he's going to go forward.
Yeah, and nobody is surprised by Senator McConnell's statement. But I think what we need to understand is that voters are actually literally voting as we speak. In states like Virginia, the American people need to be able to decide this next nomination and confirmation. There shouldn't be a nomination until inauguration. We have the history of Merrick Garland. We've got everything at stake. We know exactly what is at stake. And I will tell you, Chris, and I say this to Rebecca too, that there is no fait accompli about this nomination. There is going to be a fight like never before. People understand what is at stake. We understand what RBG's seat means, what her legacy means, how it's going to touch every single woman's life in America. People are energized in this country right now. We are 6 weeks away from an election. And so there is no fait accompli. We are going to throw everything we can at this. And there's simply no rationale or reason. And we know Senator McConnell will do everything he can. But I do not view this as a done deal at all. And we have to keep our eye on all of that. And this is going to energize voters and women in particular.
Vanita Gupta and Rebecca Tracer both joining us on short notice on an
very close. I have a friend in Texas. He said, I think you're winning by 15 points. These people are crazy. Texas is in play. They don't want to let you have oil. Think of it. It's unbelievable. Texas is in play. That's the fake news back there. For years, they said it last time too, remember?
Democrat in the White House, a Republican Senate. Now it's a Republican Senate, a Republican in the White House, and he's making very clear, Anderson, that he's going to put forward President Trump's nominee before the end of the year.
Let's get some analysis on this. Manu, thank you. Gloria, it
is on the bench. Justice Ginsburg had a distinguished legal career, the first Jewish woman to serve on the highest court in our land. Our thoughts and prayers, by the way, tonight are with the entire Ginsburg family, her colleagues at the U.S. Supreme Court, and everyone who knew and loved Justice Ginsburg. Sources on the ground tonight will put up a box of the president. He is in Minnesota tonight in the middle of a rally. They have confirmed to Hannity that the president has not yet been informed of her death prior to going on stage. Interestingly, why they did have a deep philosophical divide. Justice Ginsburg was well known to have a great, deep friendship with Antonin Scalia, who passed away a short time ago. They were close friends. By the way, my own father died from pancreatic cancer in a very short period of time. It is an insidious cancer. She battled this cancer with incredible, inspiring courage beyond heroic. She will be missed by many. Now, with just 46 days until the presidential election, we are about to experience a political hurricane, the likes of which, well, we've probably never seen. Although she spoke softly, Justice Ginsburg was a giant on the Supreme Court. Her legacy will live on in the days, weeks, and months and years ahead. And breaking just moments ago, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell mourned the loss of Justice Ginsburg and announced, quote, President Trump's Supreme Court nominee will receive a vote on the floor of the United States Senate. Here with more tonight, we begin with our own John Roberts from the White House. John.
And Sean, it is interesting to note that the president was about 10 minutes into his speech there in Bemidji, Minnesota, up there on the Iron Range, when news of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death came. So the president does probably not yet know what has happened, but just moments ago, just as part of his standard speech, the president started talking about the issue of the Supreme Court in terms of the election, saying that he will nominate justices and judges who interpret the Constitution as written, says the Supreme Court is so important the next president will get maybe up to 4 justices that will be appointed for a long, long time. So the president now has a decision to make. Does he, as President Obama did in 2016, after Antonin Scalia's passing, nominate someone to succeed Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the bench, or does he hold back? I think the betting is that the president probably will make a nomination sometime in the not too distant future, because obviously tonight is a night to pay tribute to the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and a giant on the Supreme Court, but then we'll begin the process of replacing her. And as you pointed out right at the top of this, Sean, that is going to be a battle royale between now and Election Day. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that it was her fondest wish that if she were to pass, or if she were to leave the court, that she not be replaced until a new president is installed. So the president has got this decision to make, and I would be, if I were a betting man, Sean, I would bet that the decision will be made to make a nomination. Mitch McConnell, as you pointed out at the top here, has said he will bring that nominee to the floor, and then the clock will be running. Do you get it done before the election, or do you get it done before the end of the year? Do you get it done before the end of the term, depending on how the election goes? Don't forget the Senate's going to turn over at the beginning of January, so there is a finite period of time to get a nominee through should the president decide to make a nomination. We have not heard anything yet from the White House. I'm told we probably won't hear anything until the president is on his way back. The closest we've got is Kellyanne Conway, who recently left the White House, tweeted out, quote, "Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg led a remarkable life of consequence. She worked with passion and conviction, inspired many women, offered hope to other cancer survivors. Prayers to her loved ones. May she rest in peace." Ruth Bader Ginsburg may rest in peace, but America is not going to be peaceful in any way, shape, or form, Sean, because this will be, on top of everything else that we've got going in this election, a battle right through to November the 3rd. Will probably likely also force Joe Biden to come out with a list of potential nominees as well. That's something that he's been resisting. Sean?
John, I just want to go back, because my sources on the ground with the president confirmed that his speech had already started about 10 minutes in. Other news outlets reported the opposite. We are right in our reporting. Is that correct, that he did not know?
I talked to somebody on the ground there just a couple of minutes before I came out here, and was told that the speech was underway when the news came down. I actually talked to somebody from the White House immediately after I heard the news myself, as soon as the bulletin went out here at Fox News, and the president was already up and speaking when I spoke with that person. So it's likely that he does not know. You would think, Sean, that if he knew, he would have said something.
Well, I was told very specifically he did not know. He had already started his speech before the news had passed. Stay with us throughout the hour. John Roberts will be going back.
This, right? I haven't said it in a long time because we've been doing a lot of winning. But you're going to win so much, and you're going to send Jason to the U.S. Senate, and you're going to keep...
Just days before her death, as her strength waned, Ginsburg dictated this statement to her granddaughter, saying, my most fervent wish is that I will not be replaced until a new president is installed. Jeff, that certainly a new president, meaning a president not Donald Trump.
Let's not kid around here. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a liberal Democrat. She was indiscreet before the election in 2016, displaying her contempt for Donald Trump, so I mean, she wants to be replaced by a Democrat. Period. And I don't think that's a surprise. I don't know how many votes that will shift, either among the citizens or among senators, but that is an unusually blunt statement from an unusually blunt justice.
David Gergen,
but also then for that Supreme Court seat to go, and for the court to go that much further to the right, and then for us all to be praying for Justice Ginsburg's health in a way we never had before because of the balance of the court. It all just feels mixed together with so much emotion beyond the politics here. I have to ask if you feel any of that yourself, or if you're too close to it to see it some other way that all of us feel it.
No, I'm devastated by this, Rachel. Just losing her is such a massive hole in, my, young adulthood, my becoming a lawyer, both practicing and teaching law, looking up to her, following her career. But much more than that, it is a devastating loss for justice and equality. What Ruth Bader Ginsburg did was to make it abundantly clear that the Constitution had to explicitly, wherever possible, be interpreted as providing for the equal rights of men and women. She was extremely clever in the way that she began her litigation march, because she brought cases on behalf of men. She understood that, there were certain assumptions in the law that favored or disfavored men as well as women, and she had the brilliant insight that she could demonstrate the lack of equality under law for women by litigating on behalf of men. I'm not sure many other people would have ever really understood that. And now with her loss, it is not only a personal loss, but it's a real threat to the steady march toward progress that we need to continue. This is the 100th year of the anniversary of women getting the right to vote. It took, many more years before there were legislative protections for women of color, and we're still fighting those battles. And Ruth understood this. Her great gift was not only as a brilliant lawyer and litigator and judge, but she was such a warm and understanding human being, and she really felt the loss of respect and rights that not just her clients, but women and really anyone who appeared before her in any form could feel that she felt compelled to try to remedy. I want to say a quick word about your reference to what happened when Justice Scalia died. And of course, he and Ruth were great friends. And, people talk about Justice Scalia being an originalist. He was someone who was always trying to figure out what the founders thought. I often, wondered during that time when Mitch McConnell was truly wreaking havoc on our Senate and on our norms, our values, and I would argue on the underlying original intent of the Constitution and the founders, that presidents have a right to appoint judges to fill vacancies. And Mitch McConnell denied Barack Obama that right. And that set in motion a series of events that I think did great damage to the Senate that can only be remedied by removing Mitch McConnell as the leader of the Senate. That has to happen in this election by getting a Democratic Senate majority. But in the meantime, the Democrats who are in the Senate will have to use every single possible maneuver that is available to them to make it clear that they are not going to permit Mitch McConnell to enact the greatest travesty, the monument to hypocrisy that would arise from him attempting to fill this position. So, in many ways, I think it's, a terrible loss for us all. But it's also a reminder that, she stood on the side of moving us toward a more perfect union and really underscoring equality, not just for women, but for every American. And I don't want to see that legacy ripped up by political hypocrisy coming from Mitch McConnell.
We'll have more about her life and career later this evening. But here, she's asked about her experiences as being one of very few women in law school.
This audience tonight is mostly comprised of third-year law students. And if you look out at them, we see a lot of females and also a lot of males. But that wasn't the case when you went to law school. When you were at Harvard, you were one of only 9 women, and then at Columbia, one of 12 women. We wonder if you could share with the audience a little bit about what that was like, being one of so few women in law school, and what law school generally was like for the women.
In my first year class, there were 9 women and over 500 men. We were divided into 4 sections, so most of us had one other female companion. We felt that all eyes were on us, whether it was so or not, that if we were called on in class and we gave a dumb answer, people would think, well, what could you expect from a woman? So we were super prepared. And the difference was noted by a colleague of mine at Columbia Law School. Now we're into the middle 70s, and women are showing up in numbers in law school. And he admitted to having a certain longing for the not-so-good old days. Why? Because he said when the class was moving slowly and you needed a crisp, right answer, you called on the woman. She would tell you what you wanted to hear, and you could proceed. Nowadays, he said, there's no difference. The women are as unprepared as the men.
And I think you've talked to us before about these dean's dinners. These aren't the kinds of dinners that Dean Traynor has, but would you like to share?
This was the famous Dean Griswold, who would invite all of the women in the first year class, all 9 of us, to his home for dinner. And each of us had an escort. Mine was Professor Herbert Wexler, who was visiting from Columbia that year. And after we had a dinner, it was not a distinguished dinner, and there was no alcohol served in the Griswold's home. He brought us into his living room, arranged the chairs in a semicircle, and asked each of us in turn to tell him what we were doing at the law school, occupying a seat that could have been held by a man. Now, I must say the dean didn't ask that question to wound. Dean Griswold was not noted for his sense of humor. And in fact, he had been one of the people who most strenuously urged the admission of women to Harvard Law School for the first time in 1950-51. In fact, he had worked out a meticulous budget of how much it would cost. What would it cost to admit women to the Harvard Law School? They had to install a women's bathroom, and it was going to cost $25,000. There would be no room for them in the dorms. But the dean still had to contend with doubting Thomases on his faculty. Distinguished teachers who thought that the school had made an egregious error to admit women. So he asked the question to be armed with the women students' answers so he could tell his colleagues they have plans to use their law degree to do good things. So that was his reason. Of course, the 9 of us were not aware of what provoked the question. These were pre-Title VII days, so there was no law prohibiting discrimination on race, religion, national origin, gender. Firms were totally upfront in telling you women are not wanted in this workplace, or we had a woman once and she was dreadful. How many men have you had that didn't work out as you please? Well, I was looking for a job around the time when some firms were just beginning to think they might take a chance on a woman. But I had an added liability, and that was Jane. She was 4 years old when I graduated from law school. If a firm was willing to take a chance on a woman, they were not yet prepared to take a chance on her mother.
But you did get a first legal job, or we wouldn't be sitting here together. What happened?
It was a great beginning as a law clerk to a federal district court judge. And the way I got that job, I didn't know this until years later when Professor Gerald Gunther wrote about it. He was in charge of getting clerkships for Columbia law students, and he was determined to get one for me. So he called a judge who had always taken his clerks from Columbia. The judge was himself a Columbia undergraduate and law school alum. And the judge's answer was as expected. Yeah, I've had a woman clerk before, so that's okay with me. But this is an intense job, and sometimes I will need her to come in on a Saturday, to stay late. I can't risk it. So the professor said, I have a deal for you. You can't refuse. Give her a chance, and if she doesn't please you, there's a young man in her class going to a downtown firm, and he'll jump in and take over. That's the carrot. There is a stick as well. What was the stick? If you don't give her a chance, I will never recommend another Columbia student. And that, for women of my generation, getting that first job was all important. Just had to get your foot in the door. If you got the job, you generally performed at least as well, in many cases better than the men, but you needed to get that first job to be set on your way.